Thank you so much for joining, everyone. Sishan, you can set up the deck.
Yeah, sure. Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you joining us today. I'm Sishant Dhara, and I'll be your host for this virtual session on red flags and SAR, quality strengthening suspicious activity reporting culture in the UAE. This event is proudly organized by Intellewings and FintEdu. Today, we'll talk about why having a strong suspicious activity report (SAR) culture is so important. It's just not about following the law; it's about protecting your business and building trust. In the UAE, there's now a strong focus on submitting timely and high-quality SARs. Every financial institution and designated non-financial business and profession (DNFBP) needs to build a culture where employees can spot red flags, understand risk, and report suspicious activities quickly and effectively. In today's session, we'll cover how to build a strong SAR reporting culture, how to train teams to identify and report red flags, how to make SARs clear, complete, and on time. We are very happy to have with us our speaker, Mr. Amarjeet, who has deep experience in AML compliance and financial regulations. He'll share practical tips, real-life examples, and useful steps to help improve SAR quality and strengthen AML culture in your organization. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Mr. Amarjeet Singh. Mr. Amarjeet Singh is a compliance lead in the exchange house sector at Sharaf Exchange. He's also the author of The Money Trail, Mastering Financial Crime Compliance. Mr. Majid is dedicated to keeping high standards of compliance in money transfer services. He helps make sure financial services are safe and reliable across different markets. He also trains teams to spot risk early and follow good practices in reporting. Over to you, Mr. Majid.
Thank you so much, Sishan. Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Amarjeet. I'm here to talk about the red flags and the SAR quality trainings. And so this is just, the knowledge sharing about the STRs, red flags, everything, what we are currently following, the best practices which we are following. So I'm here to just share with you the best practices here. So in today's session, we are gonna we discuss about what is STRs and how to improve the quality of the STRs and how you can ensure that you already cover your red flag indicators, how to identify the red flag indicators and ensure that you are filing the correct STR to the central bank. We also touch upon a little bit about the red flags from different sectors, and we also see today what are the insights from the UAFIU report, which is being released earlier in 2024, and also the recent one which we received from FIU. I will just share the little bit insight and the stats on that. What are FIU saying on our STRs? What we are submitting. And at last, I just give you the best practices, what I am currently following to everyone, and you guys can also add if you have anything upon that. So to start off with, um, as you guys know that about the requirement of STRs, right? It is a requirement of AML CFT law that we need to ensure that we report each and every transaction where we feel it is a suspicious transaction to FIU through our portal, which is a GoAML portal. And the most important thing is that any STR which we file to the FIU, they should have a quality, okay, and should be submitted on timely basis. It's not like we have a case today and whenever we get time or maybe after 1 or 2 months, we'll submit that. No. As soon as you receive an STR, you must ensure that submit it as soon as possible. So covering all these, as I mentioned in the today's chapter, we'll cover the red flags, we'll cover how to improve that. I'll also cover that what are the common mistakes in that STR flag, which commonly made by, the financial institutions and how to improve that. Um, as everybody knows that STR suspicious transaction is a transaction or it is attempted transaction wherever we find a reasonable ground that there are funds that are proceed to crimes. Any transaction or which is attempted transaction where we will see it is the funds which are proceed for any crime or any funds which lead to the money laundering or anything which you feel it has any kind of predicate offense or any kind of criminal activities involved in that. So most important thing is that it is just a suspicion. Okay, whenever you have any doubt on the transaction, you have a right to raise an STR. It's not like you have to be 100% sure about it yet. Yes, this is suspicious transaction. Yes, this is a money launder, this is a terrorist fund, then only you can raise it. No. So most of the people, what mistake they made, they want to be ensure that whatever STR they raise to central bank has to be the 100%, genuine STRs. I'm not saying it should not be genuine, it should be genuine STRs, but I'm saying that whenever you have any suspicion, you have to raise it. You don't need to wait for, wait for additional documentation, or wait for to ensure that you prove it, to put your 100% stamp and then you sign to the central bank. So central bank is saying, as per the FIU, they are saying that whenever you have any doubt on any of the transaction, any of the customer, okay, you have a right to raise an STR. So this is what the STR means here. Why it matters, as everybody knows, that is very, very essential tool to protect the country, to protect the financial, system. So how it identifies, it helps to identify the network of money launderers. Okay, how the people are doing the money laundering, they help to identify the money laundering network or terrorist network or any the fraud or any kind of crime, what is happening. It will help us to help FIU, help the law enforcement to identify those kind of typologies or those kind of cases, or to catch those kind of persons. So very, very important thing is that, like as mentioned, that high quality STRs are always important. Okay. There are some kind of STRs where we have little bit doubt. We don't do, much due diligence on that. And we have little bit doubt. We just not sure and short and we just submit to the FIU. So avoid those kind of situation where you are also not 100% sure. But yes, you have a doubt on that. You have to justify your doubt. Okay, on what basis you are raising an STR. So your doubt should be justified based on some kind of evidences or based some kind of justification why you're raising it to the FIU. How you are doing it, we can discuss later in our next slides. When to file STR, as I already mentioned to you, whenever there is a doubt, whenever there is a suspicion, okay, whenever there is any match, you identify that any of the sanction list, whether it's UN or it is, UE local terrorist list, OFAC, or any kind of sanction list, you know that when you what kind of STR you have read. We will not in this topic. We're not going to talk about your PNMR or other things, because that comes under the TFS and all. So we just talk only about the STRs and everything. You can also raise an STR whenever there is a customer refuse to provide the supporting documentation for the transactions, or whenever the customer does not have valid ID copy, or you identify the ID copy is altered or using some other third-party ID copies, or wherever you can see the transactions are not aligned with the customer profile and everything. So in those cases, you can raise an STR. Okay, whether it is attempted, whether you have declined the transaction or you have done the transaction. In both the cases, you have a right to raise an STR. It is your obligation to raise an STR. In the next slides, we can also go in depth in that, understand more cases where you have a right to raise an STRs in this. Now, whenever you raise an STR, the most important thing is to understand that how you structure the STR. Okay, that's a very, very important thing. If you have a good structure STR, it will help the FIU, it will help the law enforcement agencies and everything to immediately take an action on that, and do, if no need to, they will not come back to you always asking for additional documentation. Even in one site, if a documentation, if a STR is properly well defined, chronological flow is completely fine. So this is kind of best practice which you can use whenever you can file any STR. You can understand, you can answer, you can put in kind of checklist or something. So you can mention like who. Okay, who is a person you're raising an STR. Okay, whether it is a person or it is an entity, or who is that, what means, what kind of transaction, why you feel it is suspicious, what is that in that suspicious, a suspicious activity is what. Like example is here given here. It's a large cash deposits. Okay, there's example large cash deposit. The customer is doing a large cash deposits, and when he is doing, you need to ensure that they put a proper date, time, and everything. He has done the transaction on this and this date, this and this time. Where he has done the transaction, whether it is done in your branch or some other branch, or where's the location of the transaction, the branch, and everything. You can also put the reason here, which is very, very informative. You have to put elaborate reason for the reason here, why. Okay, so why should be very, very, very strong. You have to elaborate your why in at least 3 to 4 sentences. What happened, why you feel that this transaction is suspicious transaction, what made you to file an STR on this customer. So that is very, very important. Important why here? Because that is the only thing the FIU checks. Most important thing, because by reading your why, they will understand why we are raising this STR, why you have raised this STR. So you have to ensure that you have to elaborate it properly. Whatever supporting documents you have, whatever transaction documents you have their bank statement, you have the transaction supporting documents, you have their source, whatever documents you have, KYCs, ID copies, ensure that you must properly document it well. And how you can put a reason, how method, what method they have used it. Maybe they have used a multiple cash deposits, maybe ATM deposits or cash deposits, whatever they have used. So these are the six of the most important strong pillars of any kind of high quality STRs. So who, what, when, where, why, how. So if you structure all these, and you will get a proper structure of the STR. Like example, what we're discussing here, if you combine all these six, you will get a proper explanation here. Suppose Ahmad Ali means this was a person. He deposited 95,000 in 4 days. Okay, so that means what? What happened? He deposited funds when in 4 days at Al Barsha branch, where Al Barsha branch remitted to the Nigeria. Okay. And why and how you can mention here, you can see here his salary was 6,000, but he deposited 95,000 in 4 days, and suggesting third party funding or mule activity. That means your opinion on that on that suspicious transaction. So this is how you have to structure your proper STR. And then after structuring, after making the complete biography of the STR, then you can include all the supporting documentation whatever you have. The mistake what we have seen, if you read the FIU reports, also feedback report, they mentioned that most of the STRs which we receive sometime they don't include the supporting documentation. They just mention we identify the customer, we doing this many transaction from so and so date, but there is no supporting document to justify this statement, what happened, how it happened, and everything. So the most important part is that to include each and every supporting documentation, whatever you have, whether it's your KYC documentation, your ID copies, your statements, anything, whatever you have for that particular customer, you must ensure that you must attach each and every document with that STR and upload it. So that is a very, very important, structure, how you can structure the high quality STRs and submit to the FIU. Now, let us talk about what are the top 10 reasons. If you see the FIU report, FIU analysis report, feedback report, what they mentioned that the most of the top 10 reasons they mentioned that which most of the STRs has been raised. Those are the first one, which is a major one, is a transaction inconsistent with the profile. That means the transactions customer is doing is not matching with his profile. Take an example of this one, the previous slide, which I mentioned here. Here, the customer salary was 6,000, right? But he was depositing 95,000 in 4 days. So that means the profile of the customer was not matching with his salary. So those are the cases, most of the cases are there on which the STRs has been raised. Okay, same another one you can see, activity inconsistent with account history, lack of supporting documentation, the customer doing the huge value of transactions, but there is no supporting document for those. High fund velocity, low balance, fraud, you can see a lot of STRs has been raised on the fraud. No economic justification means in the sense, suppose a customer who is dealing with electronics business and all, but the transactions are happening in some other business activity. So that means there is no economic justification of those transactions, or there is no business rationale of those kind of transactions. So on those also, the lot of STRs has been raised to the FIU. And those are, you can see that the top 10 which are there, based on that STRs has been raised to the FIU. And I'm sure that these are the common one you might have also been faced when raising an STRs, like a transaction not matching, or lack of supporting documentation. So these two, in my opinion, also this is a highest one which I also have seen that during my STR raising. Now, the most important thing what central bank says that is that defensive STR. So sometimes what happened, the sake of raising an STR, because what happened, we have to report to central bank in every year, right? Everybody institution has to report. Different requirements are there to report that how many STRs you have raised in your institution, whether it is quarterly or annually and all. So to show the number to the central bank, where we have seen that a lot of people are raising a defensive STRs, Means there is no need of raising an STR, but they are a little bit doubt or they didn't do proper justification on that, or those are not a genuine STR. They just submitted it just to show the number. But central bank doesn't like this one, this kind of STRs. So what are the common mistake they mention in that? There are two things here. Let's talk about the common mistakes in raising an STR. The common mistake as per the FIU report says that there is always a generic, okay, the generic statement, and or there's a copy paste narrative. Suppose if you have raised an 10 STR to the FIU, out of 10, there might be the 9 or 8 STR have a same statement as a copy pasted statement where it doesn't make any sense. If you read the FIU report, they mentioned that there are a lot of STR where they raised that, where they mentioned that uh, uh, profile not matching with the customers, transaction not matching with the profile of the customer. Whereas when you see the profile of the transaction, his salary and all, it is matching. But there was some other issue. So that means there is always some kind of copy paste work, which we are doing it. Second thing, missing rational. As I mentioned that what is the most important thing is your rational. Your rational should be very, very strong. Why we are raising an STR? Okay. What is the suspicion in this transaction? Why you felt this transaction has to be reported to the FIU? So that kind of rationale is very, very important, where the central bank FIU is saying that a lot of mistakes are happening in that, where we are not putting the proper rationale on each and every STR, what we are raising it. Or sometime the poor grammar, or maybe the sometime the your statement is not clear, okay, what you're trying to put in that. So you have to ensure that we are not saying that it should be the proper or fluent kind of 100% grammar free text or something, but your message should be very, very clear what you are trying to explain to them. That is very, very important here. No chronological data in the sense that, as I mentioned, that you have to follow the structure. Okay, what happened, the date of the transaction value, reference number of the transaction, who was a customer, who was a beneficiary, what supporting document you have attached, what action you have taken on the customer, what is the next step you are going to take, whether you want to block the customer, you want to keep the customer open, what action you are going to take on that. So all these structured STRs you have to submit. And as I mentioned previously also, the most important thing the central bank has mentioned in that was the missing attachments. That is a most important mistake where central FIU has noticed that most of the almost 30 to 40% FI STRs which is raised to the FIU are having missing attachments. There is no attachments at all. So ensure that whatever STR you raise to the FIU must attach all the supporting documentation as much as you can. So that will help the FIU to read and understand here the case properly. Second thing, what I was talking about is a defensive filing. Okay, submitting STR without proper genuine suspicion. So central bank is saying that whenever you file any STR, you must do your own investigation in that first. Okay, if your investigation, okay, concludes that yes, this is a genuine case, okay, this is a genuine suspicious case, then only you should raise to the FIU. If you feel that no, this is not a genuine case, the customer is a genuine, he has all the supporting documentation, he has everything in fine, his transactions are everything is matching with his profile, there is no match, everything is completely perfect, then you should record those your justification and close the case. But don't raise it to the central bank. But the central bank is FIU report says that a lot of cases identified that those are defensive cases. Okay, those STRs are genuine not a genuine STRs, but still if institutions have raised those STRs to the FIU. So those are considered as a defensive STR. No big four. What happens that if you raise, I'm sure you will add up in their number. Okay, fine. We have raised this many STR to the central bank in a year. The central bank will be happy. No, it's not a case. Central bank will not be happy. If you raise even one STR in a year and that STR is a genuine STR, the central bank still will be happy. Instead of raising 100 STRs, in that 100, not even one is a genuine case. So what happens that in case if you raise any defensive STRs or not a genuine STRs, that will, okay, add up a work for the FIUs. It's overload the FIU for this. Maybe they will come back to you asking for relevant information, or maybe they feel that, you don't have a proper check or maker options, or you don't have or a proper knowledge about it. Okay, or you don't do proper EDD on that. Okay, so that may, raise a kind of red flag on you or any institution that you're not doing a proper checks, or you don't have much knowledge about it, how to raise an STR, or what checks you have to do before raising an STRs. So I would suggest avoid raising any defensive kind of STRs, and make sure that whenever raise an STR, do proper investigation internally, ensure that you're 100%, confident on that STR before you raise it to the FIU. So these are some of the best practices which we follow, which, if you have something, you can definitely add up also here. So these are the best practices which you can follow by raising an STR, like suppose STR quality, as I mentioned that, ensure you follow the 6Ws, okay, and how, what, who, what, when, where, why, and how. Okay, each and every STR you must answer this properly. And second thing, avoid copy pasting, please. Okay, this is a major mistakes what FI has identified in most of the STRs. Avoid copy pasting each STR you face. Okay, ensure that you take it as a fresh STR for you. Do the proper study on the STR, do the proper due diligence, background checks, and everything. You be certified first. Okay, when you're satisfied with that STR, then only raise it to the FIU. Evidence, as I mentioned, attach a proper evidence KYC documentation. Whether you have a KYC documentation, you have their supporting document like a statements or anything, source of fund or anything. If you have any email chats, if you have any CCTV footage, so whatever documentation, as much as you can, you must attach in that. Okay. Timelines, as I mentioned that, you must report any kind of STRs as soon as possible. Okay. Whether it is if you have a confirmed name match report or partial name match report, that is already a timeline defined by the central bank. If you go to the timeline and all, any case which has been opened, you must raise within 30 business days, right? So that is the internal timelines. If you see the central bank timelines, everything is given for each kind of cases and all. The most important thing what identified by the FIU report, which says that the checker and maker, lack of checker and maker control, where they says that there is no checker and maker in any of the STR which you raise. So that's an important thing. You have to ensure that there should be a maker and checker control in any kind of STR. One should make the STR and second one should check and approve the STR before you file it to the FIU. So that is very, very important control, which will also help you to avoid such kind of mistakes and everything. Third important thing is a training. Okay. You have to ensure that your staff, your compliance staff, your branch staff, or your FLAs and all should have a complete training, should get a complete training on the new kind of typologies or any kind of trends or anything what is happening in the market, so they can able to raise an STR to you. There are a lot of case studies the central bank FIU has, every quarter they come with a new feedbacks, they come with the new typologies and everything, the red flags and everything. You must ensure that you must cascade all this information to your down the line and also to your compliance department who are responsible to raise an STR. Defensive filing, we already talk about it. Avoid filing any kind of STR where you don't have any, suspicion or anything. And final important thing is that follow-ups. Okay. So you need to ensure that you must go and track if there's any feedback. Sometimes the central bank come back and ask you for the supporting documentation or any kind of documentation, what they need. You must immediately, follow up and make any kind of internal tracker also. So whenever you raise any STR to any FIU portal, you must maintain your internal tracker also. Okay, that's called a STR raise tracker. In that you can mention any kind of, you can mention, manage two type of, in that one tracker only you can mention one internal STR and an external STR. Internal STR means any STRs which you have raised. Suppose you have raised 20 STRs from the branches. Out of 20, you have raised to the FIU 15. Okay, then you can put a raise to the FIU 15. And then those 5 STRs which you did not raise to the FIU, which you feel those are not as suspicious cases, those you can close it out and put your proper comment on what base you have closed this STR. What justification we have put, what made you not to raise an STR to the FIU, and what control you are putting in place in that. So those kind of all the information should be there in your internal tracker, which plays a very, very important role for each and everything. So ensure that whenever raise any STR, you must maintain a complete tracker, and all the STRs, whether raised or not raised, should be properly mentioned in your internal tracker. Governance and oversight, okay, which plays a very, very important role, I think, not only in STR, but in all the pillars of the compliance functions. The compliance function, as I mentioned, as you guys know that governance plays a very, very important role, okay, and oversight as well. So what happens that is a responsibility, okay, the central bank says it's a responsibility of compliance office and MLRO to ensure that they should raise an quality STRs and should on raise on timely basis. Okay, should not delay the times and whatever timeline the central bank has given or that the central bank has given. Proper escalation from front line, your responsibility. okay, to train the employees, frontline employees, second line level employees, your compliance team who are performing the checks and balances in that. They should have a proper escalation how to raise an STR to the compliance officer. Okay, they should have internal tools, or maybe the form filling, or if you have internal kind of checklist or something tool where they can, raise an FI, STR, any suspicion case to you. So those kind of SOPs, procedures, and everything should be completely there and should be escalated. All the staff in the company should be aware of that in case they identify any suspicious transaction, how they can approach to the compliance officer, how they can raise to the compliance officer. So that is the responsibility of the compliance office to ensure that this must be done properly. Report level, board level reporting to the SAR metrics. Okay, that is very, very important part. Here it says that the compliance officer should not present to the board, okay, to the metrics. They're not talking about here the names of the people who are raised on the STR. Suppose you have raised STR on the, 10 people, you do not raise to mention all the 10 names to the board or anyone, okay, in your company, because those are confidential information. You can raise to the board that, yes, you have raised 10 STRs, okay, these 10 STRs we have raised based on this one. Maybe out of 10, we have raised 4 STRs because there was documents was not there, document was incomplete. Those 2 STR you have raised because IDs were missing, or XYZ, whatever is that. But it's just a matrix. Once again, it is not a name of the person on whom you raise an STR. So the board should must know that you are raising STRs, how many STRs you have raised in a quarter or in a year or something, and why you have raised an STR. Why? Because of 1, 2, 3, 4. And also the most important thing, in case you identified any trend in that, you must inform it to the board also. Okay, suppose a trend is as you identified a customers who are doing a transactions, below the reporting threshold. Always out of 10 customers, 9 customers are doing transactions below the reporting thresholds, or you identify a lot of Saudi real transactions or something. So that is kind of trend you identified. Okay, maybe there you need to improve something in the branch or something. You have to put some more controls in that. So those kind of trends or everything, whichever you identified during raising an STR, you must inform to the board. You must present to the board as well. And most important thing is a regular STR quality review and training refresh. You need to understand that, okay, why I've raised an STRs, what quality impact is that, okay, whether I have raised an STR, there is any quality improvement, or how you can improve the quality of the STR every quarterly. Those kind of reviews you must do and understand that. And most important thing is that the training, which plays a very, very important role. You have to ensure that you must train your staff on each and every new regulations or each and every new typologies or anything, whatever you see from the FI or from the central bank. Understanding red flags, very, very important role, because when you have understanding, when your branch staff has understanding, then only they will raise it to you or to the compliance officer. Okay. So red flag is kind of warning sign, okay, that this is something wrong or something suspicious identified. So there are some indicators, a lot of indicators are there. I cannot put everything. I just put the major one. You can see here which raise a trigger on you that we have to raise an STR. Suppose transaction inconsistent with the profile, ID copy not available, or customer always performing transaction to high risk countries. Or you can see the structuring or layering happening, the customer always performing transaction just below the reporting threshold, or doing the splitting of the transactions, or the customer doing some import export which is not matching with his profile or anything. So in case of any of these scenarios you identified, you have to raise an STR. So these kind of red flags, you need to ensure that everybody should be aware of that in your company. So then only they can identify it and raise it to the compliance officer to raise an FIU, to raise it to the STR to the FIU. Now, if you talk about the sector specific, okay, STRs, let's talk about suppose a real estate. It all depend upon your industry, what you are in. Okay, like exchange house or real estate, everybody has their own. You need to identify that you are in which sector, and in which that sector, how the people can misuse that sector. And based on that, you have to ensure that you identify the red flags. And based on that red flags, you have to have a proper controls on that. Maybe you can define some rules. Maybe you can put some controls over that to ensure that the customers or any person should not violate or should not perform such transaction to your to your institute. So take an example of, there are a few examples I've just put here, like a real estate. Okay. If you can see the customers who are paying a large sum of amount, or he's paying their transactions or making payment from the third party, or you can see is regularly flipping the properties and everything with a minimum value, or you can see the offshore companies making the payment, or the UBOs are not clear who's ultimately buying the properties and everything. So, or sometimes you'll see the customer whose profile is not that great profile, but he's buying a property of millions and millions every time. So those kind of red flags are there, which you need to identify and make sure you can raise it to the FIU. Same goes to the auditors and accountants, where you see that they can, request to create a complex structure to hide the ownership where identified, or you can identify any false invoices, or maybe the payments from the unusual or unrelated parties. So those kind of red flags, definitely you have to, put it in your mind. And dealers is DPMS, very, very important part. We can also discuss more in the DPMS, because recently we have received a circular from the FIU in the GoML. And they mentioned that there are a lot of red flags. Some of them are like high value cash purchase. Okay, the customer buying a huge, jewelries or something with a high value cash, and the but background is not matching, or sometimes they can see the splitting of transactions, always doing the transaction below threshold limit, or customer doesn't have a supporting document for those transactions, always insisting you to to pay you only to the cash and everything, not giving any bank transfers or checks and everything. So those kind of red flags which are there, you always need to keep it in mind, and make sure whenever you come across that kind of red flags, you must do a proper due diligence and raise it to the FIU. Going further, if you talk about the insurance sectors also, definitely there are something in case the customer, who pays a single premium, or immediately surrender the insurance policy after taking the policies, and not giving the proper source of fund, or making the payment through the third party channels and everything. Or you can find a lot of policies getting purchased from high risk countries, or those are critically exposed people or anything. Those kind of red flags, we have to ensure that review and check it out, and ensure what action you have to take on that. Same goes to the corporate and trust service providers also. So these are just a few of the red flags which I found it thought of just sharing with you. There will be lot more are there. You need to identify your own industry in which you are. You have to definitely will do your risk assessment, internal risk assessment, and ensure that after performing risk assessment, what kind of red flags you identify, and then make sure that you have a proper controls on those kind of red flags and those kind of risks which you identify. Apart from that, there are also FIU observations. As I mentioned to you, that there's a report which FIU has shared in Q4 2024, where they mentioned that the observations on the quality of the STRs. They mentioned there are key issues they identified in the STR. The major one is that incomplete or inaccurate STR templates. There is no proper accurate templates or STRs coming up from institutions. There are missing information in the STRs. ID numbers are missing, or ID numbers names are mismatched. The ID name is saying different Amarjeet, but your transaction history is saying something else, not matching. Or there is no complete attachment. They mentioned that we identify the transaction through CCTV footage. Customer is doing this and out or something, but there is no footage attached in the by raising to the FIU, or incorrect format. They always prefer to send them Excel sheets, not the PDF and all, because when you attach PDF, it will be difficult for them to go and find the information through PDF, or to do the control F in that. So always it's suggestion, always attach the Excels. Okay, when you have a data transition data, always try to attach Excels itself only. Delayed or placeholder response. Suppose STR has been, you identified the case in the month of second in January, but you're raising STR in the month of March or February, which is almost delayed for 2 or 3 months. So, those kind of STR you have to avoid it. Low quality STRs, or confusion between UBOs and the shareholders. Sometimes identify that customer name is mentioned, beneficiary name is mentioned the customer side. So those kind of things, that it's mentioned in the FIU observation report in terms of the quality of the STR. So you need to ensure that, as we discussed previously, there should be a checker maker. You should follow all the procedure before you submit an STRs. Um, During the recently FIU report, which they have issued to all the institutions, they identify the top 10 triggers for reporting of STRs. They mentioned that there are something which is unknown source of funds where we're not sure about the what is the source of the fund. They have received the highest number of STRs on those cases. Customer failure to provide sufficient support in documentation. Okay, which is 18% STRs has been raised by FIUs on those cases. Okay. Other thing, unusual transaction activities are happening, or this is mostly to the DPMS sector where they identify those are the cases like linked to adverse medias or possible association. So you need to identify these are the triggers on which STS has been raised. So you have to ensure that you must have a proper controls on such kind of reporting triggers, and you can put some controls or you can put some rules in the system to identify such kind of cases and ensure that you must check all these cases properly before raising to the FIU. This is a best practical, guidance for compliance team, which is from, I always suggest to my team that we just what we are following. You might be having some more. It's like the build a red flag library. Okay, very, very important thing is that it means that whatever the FIU says, whatever the feedback you receive from FIU or from the notices and all, you have to build your library for that. Okay. Real case examples you have to build in that. And based on that, you have to provide the training to your team. Based on that, you have to design your monitoring systems. You identified, suppose that any typology, you identified typology that there are a lot of transactions happening in the Saudi Riyal below the threshold limit. What you have to do? You have to go back and put a rule in the system. So if any customer doing Saudi Riyal within this threshold limit should come to you. Then you can able to identify when you get a trigger, you're able to identify that, okay, this is the issue, this is a transaction has come, and check everything was matching with this profile or what is happening in the transaction. So that's called a building a red flag library for you, which will definitely be helpful for you. Linking monitoring to typology, as I mentioned that whatever typology you identified in your, FATF guidelines or FIU reports or notices or guidance, everything, make sure you should have a proper typology report in that and ensure each and every typology you have, you should have a proper control on that. Quality review framework, as I mentioned that whenever there is an any STR, you should have a checker and maker. One thing. Second thing, you must always do a quarterly review on the STRs, which is very important. This is what the central bank checks when they come for the inspection. They check whether are you guys doing the review on your STRs or not. You should have a quality review report submissions to you to submit to your to your regulator. That yes, I have done a quality review on our STRs. Our reviews are genuine. Our STRs, what we have submitted, are genuine STRs, and this is what the procedure what we are following here. Engage frontline staffs, as I mentioned that your frontline staff should be very much aware of that, about the red flags. Okay, what is called a red flags. Okay, they should be very much aware. Second thing, they should be aware of that, how to raise an STR to the compliance officer. Okay, those kind of red flags, as I discussed in the last slide, they must be aware of that. Integrate FIU feedback, as I mentioned that whenever you raise anything from the FIU, whether it is your bulletin or any update or guidance, it should be updated on your policies and procedures. So that is very, very important, practices which you can follow in your compliance, team. There are some of the case studies which I have a thought of sharing with you, which was also the FI also has shared with. There was some company A. Okay, this was license for electronic trading and all, which and but the license of the company was on the electronic trading and all, but they identified the transaction was mostly related to the precious metal trading. Okay, so they identify the customer has done a multiple transaction during 2022 to 2023 made by the individuals from the Europe and from Asia, or many were through shell companies and everything. They also identify the large cash declared inflow outflow with there is no matching, bank deposits or import or no proper documentation for those transactions. And what were the key red flags identified during this one? They identify the repeated large cash transactions. There is no economic rationale, means the license of the customer was as a electronic trading, but the transaction behavior pattern was related to the precious metal and stone. That means the company was mostly kind of friend company. Second thing, there's also identified there was a lot of courier transactions happening to the third high risk jurisdictions, okay, which was linked to PMS trade. Okay. Third thing, multiple individual acting as a mule. That means there was a lot of people who was doing the transaction or sending or receiving fund from those entities. That was one of the red flag. And all funds directly to the same country. That means there was some another company in another country through which all the funds were transferred and through the routed. So these are some kind of red flag studies. There are a lot of studies which are there. You can understand that how these cash couriers and all these funds, they are making the black money out and doing all kind of stuffs here. Uh, Keynotes, just for to the compliance officers who all are there. Keynote just for you from my side is that, as I mentioned, always make sure you should have a checker and make a review for all the reports. You attach all the evidences with your STRs, whether it's KYC, supporting documentation, your CCTVs, your email proofs, anything, whatever you have, which can make your case more stronger or which can make FIU to understand the case well, that you have to attach. File report on time, ensure that you submit your STRs on timely basis, and a correct template you have to use. Make sure that your MLRO or a compliance officer, appointed compliance officer, review everything, should sign off everything before it's raised to the FIU. Avoid any kind of, the system triggering. It's not like always depend on the system. Whenever the system triggers the alert, then only you can raise to the FIU. No, you should use your judgment. You have to use your internal investigation or data analysis to identify any cases which is suspicious, and then you can raise it to the FIU. Last important thing, which is very, very important thing, you have to ensure that you maintain a quality, do the quality checks, and always perform and provide a training to all your team members, all your FLA staffs, and in your company to able to identify the red flags and raise it to you. So this was from my side, and thank you for giving me a time. And